Hi, everybody. Welcome to a brand new talk show that we have for the MQC. My name is Andres Zalowitz. I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Ryan Leary. I'm a chaser. I play for Emerson College. We have our guest here, Cole Tibbs from Harvard.
I am one of the captains of the Harvard Horntails. I'm a chaser.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are Off-Broom on mic, getting ready to talk about everything that has to do with MQC going forward for the rest of this season and onwards. And we have regionals coming up.
Regionals.
And regionals is a big tournament. 14 different teams are coming to this. 12 different bids are going to be handed out. We have a lot of different predictions. But first, let's talk about format. So initially starting out, we have 3 different groups, 2 groups of 5 and 1 group of 4. If you get first in your group, you get a D1 bid. And I think that's just absolutely massive because obviously it eliminates the effectiveness of bracket play. So hopefully a few different teams might be able just to sneak in through group play. And then, of course, there is bracket play on that second day to secure the remaining 3 D1 bids. If you're part of that bigger groups, the 2 groups of 5, then you do get an automatic bye if you're the second seed. So you only have to win 1 game to get a D1 bid. Potentially massive. And then 1 more left over. That team will have to win 2 games on day 2 to get that. And we also have a loser's bracket that will determine D2 bids, and 6 will be handed out on that second day. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of these different predictions that we will be seeing.
If we want to go over the groups, so far we have, as Andre said, 3 groups. There's Group A with BU, Brown, Rutgers, Emerson, and UNC/NC State, like a mix. And then in Group B, we have Virginia, RPI, Harvard, Pitt, and Penn State. And then in our Group C, we have Brandeis, Middlebury, Case Western, and UVM. So a lot of teams from the MQC in our regionals here, but a few that aren't, coming from Appalachia or the Midwest area. So we might not know too much about them, although some teams we have seen that are in regionals. Those are the groups, and then we can dive into like how we think each team will fare, and then like players to watch out for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And why don't we just start with Group A here? Obviously, I think the biggest threat to get that D1 bid on day 1 is Rutgers. This is a team that played Brandeis very, very close within last semester. They just have a lot of kind of legacy players. They do kind of have a new core going on. Byron Ing is staying there, but it's only half of the Ing twins. It's not both.
That's true.
You don't have the beater and Jason. You don't have the seeker and Jason, although Byron might find himself seeking as well. This is a retooled Rutgers team, but they look to still be dominant. No Naresh as their coach. Yeah. That's a pretty significant change. So you might see an entirely new system. I could see Rutgers catching a few different teams off guard here, and I do think they're the favorite to take that D1 bid.
That's interesting. I think I haven't seen too much of Rutgers, and I do think BU is a threat out of this Pool A, although I don't know how they fare against a team that they haven't seen yet in Rutgers.
I will say we've been lucky enough to share some practices with BU, and they are demons.
Yeah.
Like they're looking really solid. It's interesting because especially up here in the Northeast, we've had so much cold weather, and even down in Virginia, they had a foot of snow 2 weeks ago. It's been difficult for a lot of teams to get that practice in over the winter. Like at Harvard, we have the bubble, so we've been able to get those practices in. We've had a dozen practices since our last set of games, and BU has been able to join us for a few of those. I've seen like our new players have really developed a lot over that time, and I saw some of that same growth from BU as well.
Yeah, and BU is kind of like this newer roster. Obviously, no Ethan Dillon. He's now coaching that team. But man, that coaching staff is good. You have Ethan Dillon, you have Harry Greenhouse, you have just kind of like this old and new. Ethan's obviously very connected with the team, and they've done better now that he's left, which is not a disparaging comment on Ethan at all, but I think just kind of shows the depth to this BU team. Obviously, the emergence of Evan Skyraba has to be talked about. This is a player that played, I believe, his first year last year, and then just broke onto the scene this year. 49 goals on 76 attempts. Having 76 attempts in the first place is very impressive. 16 turnovers forced. Shout out Kieran Collier for all the stats. We definitely appreciate it. So that's kind of like the heart and soul of that chasing line. But what are some other players you might see from BU that could make a really big impact?
I mean, on the beater game, we have to talk about Cleo. Cleo just dominates the field whenever she steps onto it. There's no way around. If you want to beat BU, you have to beat Cleo, and that's not an easy task to undergo. Their whole beating core is very talented.
Yeah, that beating core is going to be impacted. We do have information that Molly French, very unfortunately, has gotten injured, I believe a broken bone. So Molly will not be playing at this regional tournament. That's a big blow for BU. Not only is that a consistent beater, but also that's someone who played MLQ in the summer on Forge's practice squad. I can tell you from being on that practice squad, that was not someone who I enjoyed playing against very much. Molly has this kind of exceptional ability to not fall for any fakes, and BU's going to be missing that. That's 1.42 average dodgeballs that they just don't have anymore.
That's a big loss, I think, yeah.
One thing I will say about BU is there has been a lot of this talk about potentially Harvard or potentially RPI being that second team out of the Northeast. I really do think BU has the potential, has the star power, has the ability, the deepest roster. At the end of this tournament, I do see them getting that D1 bid on day 2. I do see them securing second in this group. And I also just see them definitively being the second best team in the Northeast. I think people start to kind of pick up on that. They start to pick up at what they've been cooking over there. And yeah, I think BU is going to have a really good tournament.
Yeah, and speaking from experience playing BU a few times this semester, Emerson, we've gotten close to beating them. We've played them well, but BU just finds a way to get you, like, at the end of the game, to keep the gas pedal going, to just win. They just find ways to win. I think that's tough. Especially, they have a deep roster, too, going into regionals. I think, looking at it, I think they have 20 people on their roster. That's deep. That's a roster built for making a run into the second day.
Yes. And I think a lot of that comes down to Harry as a coach and the play style that he is teaching to. It's very... it's more aggressive and more physical than a lot of the other teams. And I think BU might end up surprising some teams here by just kind of overpowering a lot of the other teams.
Yeah, totally. I agree. And I think my muscles do too after playing BU this year. All right, so let's continue moving on within this group. Next, we can talk about Brown a little bit. Now, Brown has been one of those teams where they definitely have that star potential. We're talking Will Richardson. We're talking Tommy Flathers. But I believe in the last 2 regionals, they dropped out of day 2 because they just simply really didn't have the players to kind of keep going. This year, I think it's a different story. They have a lot more players coming, and I'm excited to see what they do.
Yeah, big roster. Looks like 15 to 16 people. I think they're a big threat. I mean, I don't know what people are expecting from Brown, and honestly, I don't know what I'm expecting from Brown. But I think they have a deep chaser line. Three stars in Carson, and as you mentioned, Will and Tommy. And I think they're beating. It's good. I think it's solid. But I just don't know what to expect. Emerson, we didn't play them in the regular season, so I'm not fully sure. But I think they can be a threat.
One thing that I kind of want to highlight, because I'm looking at their stats now and I'm seeing something a little bit different than what other teams might expect. Obviously, Will Richardson, one of the best seekers in the country, incredibly fast. You really just can't get around him. But having to take him out of the chaser game in SOP has been very, very difficult overall for Brown. Will hasn't been the only seeker for this team. You also have Carson Asua, who's caught twice. You have Junu Park, who's caught. And then I've seen Anant Cassius do it a few different times. Anant has kind of turned into this utility role player, a very big player, very physical player. I think possibly if Brown is able to get Will consistently in the chaser game, he can dominate that flag runner on pitch. And then if they still manage to get a catch out of it, that could be really big for this team. Moving on, we'll talk about Emerson. We'll talk about your team, Ryan.
Yeah, we have ECQ, we have Emerson also in the A pool. We're coming in with a bit of a smaller roster. This semester, we have 5 seniors in our LA program. They haven't been able to practice with us. They've been practicing at the club level with the second stars in LA, but yeah, we've been missing a lot of our key people, a lot of our key seniors, and we also have 2 other players abroad in Europe. And that's a massive like loss. That's 7 players off our roster. We will have Daniel Baradat, who's been in LA, but he will be at regionals, and I think that's massive. Yeah, even though shorter roster, smaller group of people, I think we have enough people to like do some damage. A lot of players on ECQ either played over the summer on MLQ teams or on practice squads, so there's a lot of
Just experience.
yeah, experience, exactly, especially in higher levels of quad ball. So I think we could be a team to look out for.
I agree. One thing I want to focus on, just because there are a few different players missing, Daniel Baradat will be back for Emerson. That's their top scorer. That's someone who I'm sure you know is just an absolutely phenomenal player, one of the best players out of the Northeast. You can hit him, take him to the ground, he's going to stand back up and posterize someone on hoops. So Emerson will definitely benefit from having that. But one other thing I just want to note is there won't be any Jonathan Nam, who was just definitively the seeker for Emerson, and a very good seeker at that. But who's going to fill that role? There's a few different options, I think, on this team. Obviously, I think the main name is Megan Brown. That's a grad student, used to play for UVM. A very good beater for this team. Again, one of those players with a lot of experience. Does have some experience in seeking, but hasn't caught this year. If Megan can step up their game, I think that would be really big for this Emerson roster. But then, of course, you take Megan out of the beater game. So then I think Peyton Schreiber, Janie Hillman, and Adrian Manansala just have to come together. It's really the three of them, and they have to play a lot of different games. So I'll be really interested to see how that flag runner on pitch goes, especially if they can keep it kind of like short and succinct, get that kind of like beater rotation back in play. Because swapping between three over a long flag runner on pitch over multiple games, that could be tough for Emerson.
Yeah.
And then the last team in our first bracket, or pool A, is a combination of like UNC and NC State or some North Carolina teams. They're not in the MQC, so we don't know like too much about them, but we heard and we've seen that they have some good players on that team. They have a lot of experience, and they could be a threat. I just don't know enough. We'll find out, I guess, on Saturday and Sunday.
One of those new combined teams. Also just exciting to see new regions becoming involved. That's kind of the benefit of having this in the Mid-Atlantic. You're going to have teams like this NC State roster that might be able to come and make a play for it because they can bring a lot of players. They can make an impact.
And so we'll move on to our predictions for this Pool A.
I do think Rutgers takes this. I was kind of interested in BU being those ones to really knock Rutgers off of that high horse a little bit, but I think just with the loss of Molly French, that is really significant, and I don't know who the next beater is on that team who's going to step up. I think there's a lot of different options, but no one with the experience of Molly French, no one with that discipline that I mentioned, so I do have Rutgers taking that group. BU will play them close. That game could be very close, but they will come in second in the group. And then I have Emerson. I think Daniel Baradat coming in is enough. I do think Megan Brown takes that step. And I think overall Emerson has fared better at previous regionals. This is a team, you've mentioned it, 5 seniors. They have a lot of people coming in. I think they kind of make that extra impact. Brown taking 4th, and then I do have NC State last. Don't know what to predict out of them. And Brown has Will Richardson. So I'll just leave it at that.
I think I might agree with you. I've been a little wishy-washy. Rutgers or BU coming out of the first or Pool A. I think I might have to agree that Rutgers comes out of Pool A just because I think, Byron is insane. And I think Rutgers is probably going to be a well-coached team, even with no Naresh. But I think plus we haven't seen them, or at least BU hasn't seen them. I think it's going to be a really close game, but I think Rutgers might take that. And then I feel like my predictions might be pretty much the same. I think BU at 2, Emerson and Brown's kind of a toss-up, but I guess I'm a little biased, and I'll say Emerson 3, Brown 4, and then UNC 5, just because I haven't seen enough of UNC, NC State to fully understand what kind of stuff they're bringing with.
Yeah, I agree. That BU Rutgers game feels like it's going to be a massive toss-up. If I had to predict, I would say it's going to come down to who gets a catch. I think it's going to be really close, and it's going to be one of those things where we might have a flag on the field for a while, and once we get that catch, that kind of ends up deciding the game. And so, just to play devil's advocate, I will predict BU winning, Rutgers 2nd, Emerson 3rd.
That's definitely a toss-up game.
A lot of really good takes there. I really like that. Moving on, we will talk about Group B. This is the UVA, RPI, Penn State, Harvard, and Pitt group. In my opinion, this is a group of death. This is the hardest group. All of these teams really have a chance to make something happen.
This is just a tough one. Every team is right there, and I think it's also a toss-up. Few goals, one good play, one crazy snitch catch could change the group. I think it's kind of a toss-up, yeah. Yeah,
and one of the things to mention, I believe Pitt has a really good catch rate right now on the season, and it's going to be interesting to see how that takes effect in in this tournament.
Totally. I completely agree. All right, so let's run through some of these teams. We'll start off with UVA. UVA, I believe, in most coaches' polls, they're either second or third in the country right now. This is a dominant roster. This is a roster that played Brandeis and won pretty definitively earlier on this year. This is a roster with Zan Siddiqui at its helm, who is one of the most physical, one of the fastest, one of the toughest to really do anything to that Zan doesn't want to do to you. So yeah, it's a good team. One thing I will mention, and we've seen it kind of across the community a little bit, UVA might only be bringing 11 people to this tournament.
Yeah, shout outs to the Reddit. I saw, UVA is only bringing 11 people. Just like with Emerson, like a small roster, especially a big tournament like this, your players might be tired at the end of it, and yeah, it could like be the difference between like a D1 bid or a D2 bid, or like winning your group and not winning your group.
Especially if they end up not getting a bye on Sunday.
Yeah.
That extra game might make a big impact.
Totally. None of these games are easy. Again, they're going to have 4 tough games on day 1. If they do end up winning the group, then those 2 games against the different winners of the other groups, those are not going to be easy. 6 tough games for an 11-person roster. I think if any team in this tournament is up for the challenge, it's UVA. They need to be able to come in and really prove it. So maybe some motivation on the side of that. We can move right on into RPI. Any thoughts about this RPI roster?
RPI is almost there. Like, I think they are a good team. They have a lot of talent, especially with Ad, with Ben, with Viviana, and Vivian. I just haven't seen them 100% click. They're almost there, and maybe this regionals, they can get there, but we'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I remember last regionals, this RPI team had one of the best showings I've ever seen this iteration of RPI have, the one after Mason DeBuff, with that kind of core of Ben Fothrup, Denny DiTomaso, Isabel McCall, Justine Cross. I mean, there's so many different people on this roster. Ad Ojo, it's a top-level MLQ seeker.
Yeah.
Viv Estrada has played professional MLQ games. You have so many different people. Anson Decker. Anson Decker is huge. Anson Decker is very difficult to tackle.
Hard to tackle, yeah.
Totally. Colin Gaines coming in this year. But I will say, at that last regionals, you had this RPI team who was within 20 of Brandeis. And that was a game for D1. And Brandeis kind of pulled that off. But I remember sitting on the sideline of that game and just, that was tense because you knew they had the players to make it happen.
Yeah.
And they did it. And then kind of moving forward into this year, they've dropped a few tough games. They've lost a few kind of random games within the MQC. And I think expectations are maybe a little bit down from where there would be for a roster with this much, clear apparent talent on it.
Yeah, I would say from playing them a few times, they're a really fun team to play against. I don't know what it is about their play style, but regardless of scoreline, it always ends up being really entertaining as a player. And I think a lot of that comes down to some of their star power. They have some really good talent, and if they can really synchronize well in this tournament, they could do very well.
That really is the name of it, I think. It's a synchronization because you do have all these different players, and I haven't seen them put it together yet.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, we have Penn State. Penn State in this group, we don't have a ton of different information on them because we don't have all the different stats, but this is a team that's been here pretty consistently at regionals.
Last year they came up to Boston, and I think Emerson, we played them, they won. It was a very close game. I don't know too much about how they're looking this year, but I have heard that they are looking good.
Yeah, it's a seasoned team. It's a seasoned team with a lot of players. I think hopefully they can try and put it together here at this one. I remember specifically they should have a sophomore player who our show producer Ethan Dillon shared a very funny photo of him just getting absolutely sat down by him at last year's regionals. So we'll see if that can happen again to any other players. We will move on to Harvard now. This is your team coming off a national championship as well. But this isn't the same Harvard that won that national championship. No Andrew Steinberg, no Anna Louisa Nicole, and obviously no Leo Freed.
Yeah.
That's a big loss. No Anna Blanchfield. It's a completely different roster, but it's a really interesting one at the same time. This is a team that no one is going to be taking easily. They have a lot of speed. They're very well coached. Any predictions on Harvard coming into this?
I think Harvard looks really good. I think they're sneaky. The quad ball community knows that they won the national championship and then lost Leo. They took a little bit of a step down, but it's not as big of a step down. I think they're still a massive threat. Emerson, we've played them twice. We played them close, but Harvard also, what I was talking about with BU, they just have that edge. They're just coached so well by Ethan. They just will win games, and I think they could potentially win a few, enough to grab some bids, or one bid At regionals, yeah.
Yeah, and there have been some additional roster changes as well from the last time you guys saw us on a field. We no longer have Ian Beating. Unfortunately, Lance Bay also had an injury this past week, so he's not going to be playing. So a few of our stars this year are not going to be at this tournament. We also have a massive amount of new players, and it's hard to tell how those new players are going to perform in games just because they haven't been in that situation yet. But like I said, over these past dozen practices in the bubble, it has been like night and day. Actually, the first day in the bubble, I felt like I was losing my mind because everything was so just discombobulated. Nobody was on the same page. We could barely even get a pass to anybody just moving the ball around. It was tough, and I was like, oh boy, if this is going to be what the season looks like, this is going to be a problem. And then everybody started working. We started working on skill sessions even just prior to practice. We were running. Some of us were out there for 4 hours on some of those days, just running drills for an hour before a 3-hour practice. Yeah, and I really think that work is going to show. The cohesion that this team has now is night and day different than what you guys would have seen in the fall. And we even have some new players that didn't play with us in the fall that have really been able to get a lot of reps in over the winter here. To talk about coaching, I mean, I feel like we have maybe the best coaching staff in the country. It's
hard crazy to say.
I think that's fair. Yeah.
And we're really lucky for that. And that allows us to have those newer players kind of get up to speed a little bit faster. And I don't want to give too much away, but you're going to be seeing defenses out of Harvard that you've probably never seen us play on a field. So keep a lookout for that.
Okay. Yeah. 4 hours worth of practice, new defenses from just some ridiculous coaching. For the record, that's Ethan Strum, Max Havlin, and Lulu Zhu, which that's, the two best beaters in the country, arguably, and Ethan Strum, obviously a very good coaching line. Yeah, and I do want to shout out some of that different depth that I have seen from Harvard, because you do have the bigger names, but with no Ian Polk, I'm looking to see a player like Rosa Lee really step up. This is someone who is kind of coming into this sport. I remember I was talking with the captain for Brandeis, and he was like, hey, this is someone who looked really impressive. And the stats show it. I mean, 60 possessions, 1.58 dodgeballs. That's impressive. This is a player that might be able to step into that beater role. And then one other player I really want to shout out is Elisa C.
Oh, yeah.
I commentated with Ethan Dillon the Harvard versus Emerson game at that last kind of round robin we had. Elisa C. 3 straight possessions, comes down, absolutely unloads from beyond the keeper line, straight through middle hoop. 3 straight times until the entire defense had to shift because Elisa was just going to keep shooting.
Yeah, she's a shooter.
She's a shooter. She really is a shooter. I mean, this is her first year playing quad ball. 16 shot attempts. 16 shot attempts in your first year playing quad ball. And not in that traditional archetype either. I think this is a player that could really show out, especially with some confidence, especially with more practice. So yeah, I'm looking to see more of that Harvard depth really making an impact.
Yeah, one of the big things we've been focusing on, especially me, I've been pushing this a lot as one of the captains, is to really work on arm strength. I think one of the limiting factors for a lot of collegiate teams is the ability or the lack of ability to move the ball around over a larger distance. If you're not able to pass it more than 5 yards, it's kind of hard to do much on the field, right? Having multiple players who are able to consistently make shots from outside of the keeper zone really forces defenses to play us a lot differently than if we didn't have that skill set. And I think a lot of the work that we put in over the winter is really going to show this weekend.
Yeah, Elisa C. is probably one of my new favorite players in quad ball. I remember her just shooting, and as a shooter myself, I gotta respect that. All her shots went in, and I think you have to watch out for her. If you want to win a game, you gotta stop her, because she will shoot the ball right over your head and it will go right.
Yeah, totally. Okay, and moving on to that final team in this group, you have Pitt. This is a Pitt roster that we don't know a ton about, but not one that you can take lightly. Again, another team that's been around for a while, another kind of like mid-Atlantic team. The Northeast hasn't played them a lot. Should be interesting to see how RPI and Harvard specifically, teams that don't have a good understanding of that Pitt roster, kind of go into that game. I could see Pitt taking a game off of one of those teams for sure. So, yeah, not an easy matchup by any means.
I mean, yeah, I also don't know much about Pitt, but they're here, and I think they definitely could be a team to watch out for.
Now, all I know about the Pennsylvania sports teams is that in football and wrestling, they're dominant and they're scrappy, and I'm expecting a similar level of physicality. If they don't want to bring it, then fantastic. But I'd much rather expect we're going to get plowed over and then deal with it than vice versa.
For sure. Okay, it's your group. What are your predictions?
Harvard winning, obviously.
I love it. I love the confidence.
I think I think RPI looks great. I think they're a really solid team. I think a lot of it is just going to come down to that work over the winter. It's hard. We haven't seen anything for 3 months at this point, and that's a long time to practice. And so knowing the amount of changes that we've had as a team, I'm sure other teams have had similar growth over that time period. And so it really feels like it's going to be a tough weekend. But I think it's going to be really mixy.
Yeah, for sure. I have UVA winning this group, even with the smaller roster. They have enough talent on it. David Littleton is a fantastic coach. I do think they're able to take it. After that, I do have Harvard. I do think Harvard makes that leap. They get that bye in bracket play on day 2. They get that D1 bid. After that, I'm looking between RPI and Penn State, and it's really close. I think that game is gonna be a very close one. Both teams have a lot to play for there. That's the chance to get a D1 bid. If you're 4th in that group, you're now looking at only D2 bids. You're only qualified for a D2 bid. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a toss-up. I think I might have Penn State taking it, but RPI absolutely has a chance to make that play. And then I do have Pitt coming in last.
Interesting. I think Harvard takes this pool. I think they might just be the best in this pool, and they got the talent, they got the coaching. And I think they take it. And then I think UVA is probably solid too. And then I'd say, but the last 3 teams are probably a toss-up, seeing as I don't really know that much about Penn State or Pitt. I don't really know too much, but I think RPI, if they get together, they can do a lot. They can be a real threat. So I think they could probably take a 3 spot in that pool.
All right, cool. We will move on to Group C. This is the final group that we have. It's Brandeis, it's Middlebury, UVM, and newly formed Case Western Reserve University. Welcome to Quad Ball. So yeah, just starting off, this is a group of 4. I think it's probably the most clear cut out of all the groups. Brandeis, nothing to say. All these teams we're taking absolutely very seriously, but I do believe these are teams that we've beat before, and hopefully we should be able to beat them again here. Thoughts on this Brandeis roster?
Yeah, Brandeis is a scary, scary team. So much depth. I think just Eli, Shakti. Shakti is also one of my favorite players. Playing with him over the summer, he's a dog. He's gonna score goals. He's gonna stop you from scoring goals. Just this whole roster, like top to bottom. Caitlin Penny also amazing. I think this is a team to watch out for all the way, top to bottom.
Yeah, one of the things I've noticed in playing you guys is that there's never a point when who you have on the field gives us a chance to relax. I think the depth that you guys have is really solid, and I think that's really going to help in as many games as you're going to be playing this weekend. And I'm looking forward to see how you guys do.
Yeah, totally. I'm looking forward to it too. I won't give anything away too much. I will just comment on Shakti. I was mentioning before we started recording, I do not remember the last time I have tackled Shakti in practice. And oh boy, have I been trying. That is a USCA player the entire way through and through. And this team is just infinite. I do just want to shout out coaching as well. Tyler Beckman and Fiona Weishart, 2 RPI alums, they've come into this Brandeis program, and you can really accredit a lot of what Brandeis has done to them. All of it. They're just fantastic coaches to have. And then also Alex Wicken.
Yeah.
Alex Wicken was a prominent player on this Brandeis team for a while, graduated, and then immediately started picking up coaching. And we have been so grateful to have Alex Wicken on this team. Basically, our strength and conditioning coach on top of it. We're a lot faster and we're a lot stronger because of Alex. So even through all the pain, thank you, Alex. We appreciate it. All right, so next we have this Middlebury team that I find to be really interesting. There's a lot of players on this Middlebury roster that I think can have a huge impact on the game, but this Middlebury team does not have a lot of players, and that has kind of consistently held them back at previous tournaments. Yeah, what do you make of this team?
Yeah, I mean, I played with Jason Wu over the summer. He's Jason Wu. He's so good. He's scored, 60 goals this fall? He's pretty much unstoppable. Yeah, I mean, if Middlebury's gonna do however far they go this regionals, it's gonna be Jason Wu taking them there. And that's not to discredit all the other players on the roster, because all the other players on the roster are also key players, key pieces in that lineup. But I think Jason Wu is just, if he can do however good he can do, is however good Middlebury does.
Yeah, totally. And Jason Wu, I like to call him Jay Weezy. Should catch on to the Jay Weezy nickname. He's done it on incredible efficiency. 60 for 78. Taking 78 shots and making 60 of them, that's crazy. Jay Weezy, absolutely a player to look out for, but I'm looking at some of these other names on this Middlebury roster, and I think they can have a huge definitive impact as well. Specifically, I'm going to shout out Kate Petty. I played with her over the summer on that Boston Forge team, and Kate is fantastic. And for some reason, it just hasn't been unlocked at Middlebury. I don't know why, but hopefully this break has given them a chance to kind of get together, get Kate more involved, because the more involved Kate is with this team, the better they do. Straight up. And then I also just want to shout out Danny Smith. This is a player that I didn't have on my radar at the start of this year, but 1.72 dodgeballs on 9 turnovers forced, playing 65 possessions.
That's a lot.
That's good.
That's good.
That's really
That's
good.
really good.
And that's kind of a new player in this Middlebury beater line, where they've been very much the same beater line for a while. To give Josh Harkins a break, to give Hayden Lasser a break, that could be really big for this team. And then finally, Sydney Alexander, absolutely amazing defender. This is a definitive second to Jason. I'd rather try and get around Jason than try and get around Sydney. I just think she could have a really big impact at this tournament and make her name known.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Next, we can move on to UVM. Any thoughts on UVM?
I think UVM as a collective they are locked in with each other. They have such good chemistry. Everybody knows each other. Everybody works well with each other. They can put up a good fight in this. Even though they have a tough pool, they can work their way up in trying to get a bid.
Totally. I think they have a chance to make an impact. I don't see them making a huge splash on day one, but I do think that they will be battling for that final D2 spot. I do see them taking it. A few players just to call out from there. No more Jack Maldivere. That was a player that was really significant for UVM.
You graduated, right?
Graduated. More significant than just in statistics. Jack was kind of like the coach of this team. I don't know how much of his presence will still be there, so hopefully he still kind of is able to interact with the team in some sort, but losing their coach and one of their best players, that's tough. I'm looking at players like Carter Boudreau, Jack 14 to really come in, kind of fill that gap leadership-wise. Those are players that have scored a lot, and to be fair to this UVM roster, a lot of players have scored for this team. They have a lot of different scores. I think you could see a lot of different players making an impact.
Also, another name you need to watch out for, Ryan Kohler. She's a good player, and I feel like being up there in UVM, we don't hear too much about the big names up there. She's a scorer, and she can play defense, and I think she's a player that elevates this UVM team.
For sure. And then finally in this group, again, only 4 people, we have Case Western Reserve University, kind of like this new team. We did hear they're bringing like 14 people, so shout out Case Western.
Yeah.
I know Brandeis, we're looking forward to playing y'all, again, to meet some new faces in the scene, so yeah, good luck to you guys. All right, so we've run through the groups.
Oh, predictions for group.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Predictions for group C. Do you want to start since it's your pool?
Brandeis wins it. Shout out Brandeis. After that, I do have Middlebury, then UVM, then Case Western.
I think that's fair. I think Brandeis is at the top of that pool, and then I think you got Middlebury, UVM, and then Case Western. I also haven't seen much of them, but I think they're at the bottom of this group.
Do you agree?
I definitely have Brandeis winning. I really want to see Case Western show up for this tournament and just kind of blow everybody out of the water, surprisingly, and pull off that second place in that pool. So I'll have them at second, followed by Middlebury, and then UVM.
All right.
Okay.
Nice. We can now move into kind of our final segment. We have a few different takes that we've come up with. We like to call this the blue card, yellow card, red card. Blue card being the most safe take, yellow card being a little bit out there, red card, crazy take. Your craziest take for this tournament. Okay.
Do you want to start with your blue card?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will start for sure. First of all, I think Brandeis wins this tournament. I'll just say it, we have the deepest roster. I think dilapidated UVA roster might be very helpful for that. I'm just going to put it out there. But my other blue card take is going to be BU kind of solidifies themselves as the second best team in the Northeast. I think teams in the Northeast know it. I don't think everybody else does.
Yeah.
So I just want to make that pretty clear. My yellow card take, I think RPI misses out on a D1 bid in this tournament. They have a tough group. They will drop into D2. They will absolutely get a D2 bid. But I do think Penn State manages to beat them. And then my red card take, this is my out there take, but genuinely, I think this is going to happen. Jay Weezy has the most goals in this tournament. Middlebury Beaters have the most average dodgeballs out of all teams that play, and they sneak into the final D1 bid because they will only have to play 5 games in this tournament. If they get second in their group, having to only play 3 games on day 1, again, smaller roster, and then only have to play 2 games on day 2, I don't see how this Middlebury team doesn't kind of make it there on the back of some really impressive performances.
So my blue, yellow, red is blue card. I think Cleo is the best beater at the regionals and has the highest average dodgeballs, has the highest beater stats. Yeah, I think she just dominates. My yellow card, I'm gonna agree with Andres that I think Brandeis wins this tournament. I don't think anybody is better than Brandeis. My red card is could be out there, but I think Brown takes a D1 spot. I think they just put it together, and I think they could be a team that does a lot of damage. I think they're a team that is sneaky, really good, really at the top.
All right, cool. Thank you. Yeah, definitely a spicy take there.
Yeah, we'll see. All right, so to wrap up, I'm gonna pose a question. What's your dream matchup at this regionals? Who do you want to see? Who do you want to be on the sidelines, on the bleachers, and sit back and just watch 2 teams go at it? Who's that matchup for you?
Yeah, I have Middlebury trying to get a D1 bid here. I think they're just such an exciting team. They run, their beaters have some of the best arms in the Northeast, and that means, of course, in the entire country. I'd love to see them play someone like an Emerson, like a Harvard, like a BU. Specifically, I'll say Harvard Middlebury. I think that'll be a really exciting matchup. Those are 2 fast teams. Yeah. Those are 2 teams that are going to want it, and they're going to want it really, really bad. So maybe a day 2 final bracket matchup to get that last D1 bid. Man, that would be exciting. Any games you'd really like to see?
Yeah, I'm kind of lucky in the sense that the game I want to see is actually a game I believe we're going to be reffing, which is going to be Rutgers BU. Nice. I'm really excited to watch that matchup. I think it's going to be really close. I'm just really stoked. No bias on the reffing. However, I'm excited to watch it.
Ryan, what about you?
I really want to see a Brandeis Rutgers game. I was watching Brandeis versus Rutgers earlier from a few months ago, just trying to get my mind in the quad ball space before we film this. But I think that would be probably the 2 top teams in this regionals playing against each other, and I think that'd be really fun to see.
Yeah, I can tell you we're looking forward to playing Rutgers. We've played each other a lot over the last few years. Yeah. We know them and they know us, and we're excited for it.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, cool. We hope everyone is going to be able to tune in for regionals down in Howard County, March 1st and March 2nd coming up. This has been the first episode of Off-Broom on mic. We hope you have enjoyed. Thank you very much, Cole, for being here as our special guest. We appreciate it. From Brandeis, thank you all very much. We will see you on the next one.